Hey guys, what's going on? It's Jay, and what I got for you today is the new Sony 16mm f1.8 lens, and we're gonna go check out that covered bridge over there. It's a G lens. It's gonna go for around $799 US, and it's got a really fast f1.8 max aperture. But one of the coolest things about this lens is how small and lightweight it is. So it's very easy to use in a gimbal situation like I'm doing right now. So it's not gonna be too fatiguing on my shoulder. Anyways, 16mm is fantastic for stuff like this because that wide angle view makes everything look so vast and like more epic. For example, check this out. See what I mean? Isn't that incredible? 16mm makes this look so much cooler than say like a 24mm, 35mm. If I hug the right side, hold it at a slight angle, you can get a view like this. And this is what it looks like looking at me. I'm walking on snow here, so I just wanted to try to get you a side profile of this beast. It's a beautiful bridge. Livingston Manor covered bridge. So this is what the setup looks like. Got the mic on top, got the ND filter, the variable ND, and I got the Sony A7CR. All right, so because 16mm is so wide, you can use active stabilization mode. And active stabilization mode is like a, just more powerful mode. It adds a little bit of digital stabilization on top of the sensor stab. So you got sensor plus digital. So it does crop in a little bit. And I'm walking on snow here, so it's pretty uneven terrain. So you can judge for yourself how good this works handheld as opposed to using a gimbal. Now I actually have the aperture at f1.8, so I'm using a variable ND filter as well to help keep the shutter speed as slow as possible. The shutter's still a little bit too fast though. It's at 1/200th right now. So I just wanted to go over a couple of features real quick of this new lens. Now this is a G lens, so it's got the G badge on it. It's very high quality. So this lens only weighs 10.7 ounces or 304 grams, which is extremely light for a 16mm f1.8 lens. Another feature about this lens that I really like is the minimum focus distance. You can get really close to your subject, like 5.9 inches or 15 centimeters approximately. So check out a couple of these sample photos I took at the minimum focus distance just so you could see what I'm talking about. And with the fast f1.8 aperture, you could really get incredible background defocus at f1.8 at that minimum focus distance, which is really cool. I love that feature when you can get super close to stuff. So it kind of opens up the door for some very unique wide-angle, narrow depth of field type of shots. Now this lens has a couple cool features on it. It's got the manual aperture ring along with the iris lock, which I really like, so you can keep that ring from spinning around on you if you don't want to use it. It's got the autofocus manual focus switch. It also has the custom function button on there. And then of course it's got the click declick for the aperture itself. As far as the front of the lens goes, we have a 67mm filter thread, and it's got the fluorine lens coatings on there. Less likely for stuff to stick to the front element. Another cool feature about this lens, and pretty much all the newer Sony G lenses and GM lenses, have the dual XD linear focus motors. So that's the latest and greatest technology. It's got two of them in there, so it's even faster. And what that's good for is basically tracking high-speed moving subjects in particular. Like, picture skateboarders, snowboarders. You're in the half pipe, you're nice and close to your subject as they pop out of the ramp, and you can get those really cool, epic shots. And this lens is going to easily be able to track that stuff. So 120 frames per second on the A9 III, or 240 frames per second if you're recording ultra slow motion video. You can see here the background separation is pretty good. So with all that being said, what I love particularly about 16mm or just wide angle lenses in general is that vast view you get So you get like more foreground, more sky, and it's just wider looking. So it makes like buildings look smaller, like and more epic. Like even when you're close to building, you can get like the whole building, even when you're close to it with such a wide angle lens. And it gives you like a different perspective. So that perspective distortion is what kind of makes it look so vast and like epic looking, you know, especially landscape style shots with like, you know, a reflection or something like that. Unfortunately, it's like freezing here, so I don't really have much reflection opportunity. However, I did get a couple of reflection shots of this incredible excavator, as you can see here. Now, just for a real quick sharpness test, I just took a snapshot in the lab to test the corner sharpness really quick. And you can see here, it's very, very sharp in the corners and super impressive optically in that regard, even at f1.8, which is quite amazing. Like I said, the technology is just incredible on these new Sony lenses. It just keeps getting better and better. So the only competition for the Sony 16mm is the Viltrox 16mm f1.8 lens. And that lens goes for like $580. The Sony is going for $799, so it's only about 200 and change more, and has quite a few more features than the Viltrox, but the biggest one being much smaller size, much less weight, and of course the super advanced autofocus system. In addition, I love the iris lock, which the Viltrox does not have. So you end up turning the aperture ring by accident without that lock. You're looking at the Sony 16mm right now. The front of the lens is right here. So the front of the lens is about 1 foot away, 12 inches away approximately. Quick flare test while I'm here. The ZF 1.8, by the way. So we have this nice pedal style lens hood here. We got the pinch style lens cap, pretty standard. We also have the manual aperture ring here, which I currently have locked with the iris lock right here. So we have the iris lock, which is very nice. Now that that's unlocked, now I can turn the aperture ring. Now you can also lock the aperture iris when it's on like the actual f-stop numbers, and then it won't go into auto. So if we unlock it, we put it to auto and then lock it again, now it stays on auto and does not move from there. Now, looking at the back here, we have some pretty solid weather sealing, and we got that nice rubber gasket on the back. We also have 11 rounded aperture diaphragm blades in there, which will yield you a nice, pleasing bokeh rendering. And this is what it looks like mounted up to the Sony a7CR. So you can see how it looks on this camera. It fits pretty much perfect. It's like very well balanced here. One other thing I wanted to mention here is how smooth the focus ring is. Very, very smooth, feels like butter. It's got just a little bit of dampening on there to make it feel that extra smooth and silky. Now this lens also has focus breathing compensation support, which is quite nice. Even though the focus breathing is very minimal on this lens, it's nice having the option because it pretty much cancels it out completely. So it does crop in like a tiny bit, as you could see here in the lab scene when I turn it on and off. And it's just a slight crop, you know, so it'll go from like 16 to maybe like 17, 18mm or 17.5mm, something like that. Same thing with active stabilization. When you turn active stabilization on, it crops in quite a bit. So maybe like 18mm when you're using active stabilization. So, which is still wide enough to walk and hold no problem. So that's a really nice option, because what I was using previously was the 20mm f1.8 G lens, which is very similar to this lens, except it's obviously not as wide. So if you were to turn, you know, active stab on with the 20mm, now you're looking at like 22, 23mm, and it's starting to get a little bit tight close to the face. So the 16 allows for that much more vast view when active stab is also enabled. All right, guys, so just to be transparent here, Sony did send the lens to me early as like a loaner situation. So I had it for a few weeks to play with, and I have to send the lens back to Sony. So no money exchanged or anything like that, just so you guys are aware. All right, so when it comes to distortion, this lens has quite a bit of distortion. So you're only gonna see that when shooting RAW. And once you bring it into your computer, you can apply the lens profile correction in the Sony provided Imaging Edge desktop software, which is free. So you can fix it very easily on your computer, and eventually Lightroom will have the profile correction as well, like Adobe Lightroom, and other editing software will eventually have that correction. So why this lens has so much distortion is because Sony's relying on software to fix it, and that's allowing them to make their lenses way smaller and way lighter weight. So it's kind of like a give and take situation. So when you use the lenses on a Sony camera, it's going to correct it for you automatically if you're shooting JPEG or if you're shooting video. Another situation where it might affect you is if you're using a Sony lens on like a Nikon camera or something, like with the Megadap adapter. If you're recording video on like a Nikon, you will see the distortion because the camera's not going to correct for it. But for the average user, it's not really much of an issue in my opinion because the lens profile fixes it very easily. So I also did a deep dive comparing the Sony 16mm f1.8G lens to the Viltrox 16mm f1.8 lens. So if you want to check that video out, I will have it linked below in the description. And other than that, that about wraps up this review. So I hope you guys got what you were looking for. If you have any questions or comments, please share below in the comments section. And of course, below the video in the description area is where all the links will be to other videos and the gear that I use to make this video. So I appreciate that. They are affiliate links, so thank you so much for your support. And please consider giving me a thumbs up and be sure to hit that subscribe button as well. All right, guys, I will catch up with you next time. Take care.